I want to welcome you back to the Healthy Returns Podcast. My name is Sharon Polsky, and I am your host. And the Healthy Returns Podcast is brought to you by eVolt 360. We are transforming the way businesses and individuals approach body composition analysis and use health data to achieve better health and better business. So, on today's episode, we have Don Bennett, and he is one of the founders of MOOV in Utah. And we are going to talk today about how they implemented BIA technology as well as some other types of technology to really improve patient outcomes. And he implements it in every aspect of his patient experience. So they come in for a clinical assessment. He uses it as part of every clinical assessment, regardless if they're there for weight loss or pain management or just better health. So we are going to talk to Don, and he is going to explain to us how he uses BIA technology for improving his patient outcomes. This is Don Bennett, and I want to welcome him to the Healthy Returns Podcast. Don, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, Sharon. So thank you so much, first off, for having me. I'm a physician and I'm a medical director at one of our clinics called MOOV. I'm traditionally trained as an emergency medicine physician and then fellowship trained in the American Board of Anti-Aging and Regenerative Medicine. So we run a clinic in Utah. We have now 7 clinics across the United States, and we help people achieve a level of health they never thought possible. That's like our whole goal: take you from metabolically unhealthy or wherever you're at and achieve an optimization for you that you just are amazed to have. So we want people to feel great.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about MOOV. And you guys use a tremendous amount of technology to improve those patient outcomes. So I know that you use BIA, but what other kinds of technology do you use to improve patient outcomes?
Yeah, it was so fun to come up with the MOOV experience. Like, how are we going to be different? How are we going to be, set ourselves apart? And then how do we really take a patient from where they're at currently, meet them where they're at with objective data and then the subjective information from the patient, and then build a plan to get them there. So we do a bunch of stuff. First, we use the eVolt scanner, which is body impedance scanning that you turned me on to a long time ago, because it was just not cost effective, and it wasn't reasonable as we upscaled to put a DEXA scan in every single place. And so
and with DEXA, you have the cost of the DEXA, they have to be constantly calibrated to make sure that they're accurate. But also, people keep talking about how the DEXA is the gold standard of body composition testing, but 2 DEXAs don't even agree. So there is no gold standard of body composition testing. So our goal is just to be able to create comparable scans so we can track patient progress.
Right. And so as we looked at like, how do we build this MOOV experience and get that data, we were like, okay, each state has different laws.
Yes.
You have the return on investment that you have to look at. And then, radiation isn't nothing. It's not very much in a DEXA, but it's not nothing.
And we don't want to do it every 30 days.
Right, exactly. And the other thing is, then you have to expose your staff. You have all of those things that go with it. And it's just from a flow and process, it's difficult to institute that. I'm a big proponent. Hey, everybody needs DEXA scans at different times, but from a let's monitor you on your journey, that wasn't really great for us. So, we do our body impedance scan. All of our clients get a VO2 max when they come in. And then we retest their VO2 max about every 3 months, because we have that technology there. Because what we want to do is we want to unleash that fat burning potential, and we want to harvest the ability to keep the muscle. And so by us getting their zone 2 correct and their fat burn max correct, we're able to really potentiate what we get out of the body impedance scan and show some really amazing results. And then we get, a ton of biomarkers. All of our clients come back and they're like, you drew 15 vials of blood, you drew 12, and I'm like, yeah, we needed to for you. We had to get all of that down. And then they sit down with one of our trained physicians and they go through an hour-long consultation where we unpack all of that and use all this to really help them meet their goals. So we've just had amazing results instituting this.
I love hearing those stories. What kind of patients do you have? Are they weight loss? Are they pain management? What does that patient look like? Because I know you have a variety of patients.
Yeah, I think that's what's so fun about it is we're able to help so many people. So, we have everywhere from the elite athlete all the way through to the ultra metabolically unhealthy. We have neurodiverse kids, teenagers that we're helping kind of change everything and get their gut access and their brain access and everything all better and restore them to a point where, like I got a call from the mom and she's like, hey, my boys who are in their 20s, they haven't been able to ride a Disneyland ride since they were 13 years old because they were so obese. And they're on their way to Orlando. And these kids the young men now are ecstatic because they're going to fit in the roller coaster. Aggregate, they both lost together. When you take these boys, they lost over 300 pounds, and we were able to retain the majority of their muscle mass. Where
Which is unreal. And by the way, did you use some GLP-1s to help with that?
yeah, of course,
But
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 that
but you retained the muscle mass, which is why I
yeah,
asked that
right.
question.
Exactly. And the funny thing is when people look at what we're doing, they're like, you barely put them on any GLP-1s at all. And I'm like, yeah, because food is medicine, exercise is medicine. And then we're getting the data to help guide them along that course. So it's been so fun. And thanks to you and to other people who have helped us with that science along the way, right? Because you had to put a whole team together and to figure this out. So it's so rewarding. So we can start from the ultra athlete and everyone in between. A ton of our patients now are the perimenopause and menopausal women.
And
Uh,
thank gosh, somebody is finally servicing that group. You and I talk about this all the time, but to me, our mothers suffered silently, and then they never passed on anything to us. So I know your wife has had this conversation with me. I've had this conversation with you that we were like floundering through this, and I didn't take suffer silently as an answer. And so I sought out answers. And so many women need what you're doing, and it's still hard to get, but there are places like yours out there now, which makes me really happy.
Yeah, and I think it's part of that kind of that Gen X mentality. We're like, oh no, this is not going to happen to me. I watched my parents, I watched my grandparents. There's got to be better answers because we've seen answers be created our whole lives.
Because you guys do so much on the assessment side up front, that if you can create these protocols, and I know MOOV has, like everybody gets a BIA scan in all of your locations. Everybody, if you can do the assessments in a certain way, the outcomes actually don't take a year and a half. They take 6 months, 9 months. You start to see light at the end of the tunnel quicker when you use these assessment tools. So when your patients come in and they're there for their first assessment, you put them on their BIA scan, you put them on their other modalities, and you sit them down for their first assessment. There are 30 categories to choose from in an eVolt scan. What are the ones that are most important to you? Because they're only going to remember 5 things when they walk away. So what are those categories that are most important to you?
Well, I think that's part of the wisdom of the practice, right? Like you have all this information at first, and then the person walks out and they're like, actually, I don't remember anything you said because you vomited it out too many things. And
Correct.
we started narrowing it down. One of them is I'm like, here's your weight. I'm not really concerned about your weight, but weight is important because I want you to feel good about yourself when you step on the scale. If you could wave a magic wand, what number would that be for you? And they tell me our number, and I'm like, okay, that's our goal. But then now let's talk about other things. And then
What I
next,
ask people, it's almost identical to that, but what I ask people is I say, in your lifetime, what was the weight you felt best at? And then that's what I use as their goal weight, because a lot of times it's not their high school weight when they were at their leanest or smallest. It was actually in like their late 20s after they lost the freshman 15, and then they kind of got into life and became an adult, and they had balance. They could still go out on the weekends and have a cocktail and not really gain that much weight. So that's where I go, but it's almost the same question.
I love it. I love it. And all of our patients are different, right? It's the person who needs to lose the baby weight. It's the person who,
Yeah.
what, all these different things. The next thing I go to is I'm like, okay, let's talk about the most important metabolic organ in your body, your skeletal muscle mass. And we highlight that number and we look at their skeletal muscle mass. We kind of briefly look at their mineral density to make sure it's okay, and I just say your bone density is fine, or it's, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
we got to work on that. That's usually not a big one. And if there's an issue there, like if our mineral density is lower than I think it will be, I usually am then referring them out to go get a DEXA to double
Yes, for
check.
sure.
So then we move over to our body fat content. And I'm like, okay, here's your subcutaneous fat. And they're like, what does that mean? I'm like, that's the fat that gives you the cellulite. That's the fat that makes you not look the greatest in your bathing suit, right? And this is how much it is. Do you like that number? And anybody who sees 30 pounds of subcutaneous fat, they're like, no, I don't like, no way, I don't like that. And then we move to what's the most important fat in your body right now is this visceral fat. And we highlight the visceral fat number and the visceral fat area. And I'm like, these are two different things. The area is for me to follow. And the number right here is more easier for you to figure out. And these percentages are important. We talk about the metabolic factory that the visceral fat is and how negative it is, and what we're going to do. And then I look down and I'm like, okay, here's body fat percentage. And that
Wait,
body
let's go back
fat,
to visceral really quick.
yeah.
What are your biggest concerns about visceral body? I always say subcutaneous fat is what keeps you warm, but visceral body fat is what I like to monitor. What are your biggest concerns about people that have visceral body fat that is not optimal?
Yeah, those are the people who have the biggest metabolic dysfunction. And so we actually see when we look at them, we run lipid NMR panels, right? Where we're looking at the MRI on your lipids, essentially, and all these other markers. And those are the people who have high visceral fat. They have the most metabolic dysfunction. And of course, that correlation is there. We know that's there. And so we talk about how important it is to be doing weightlifting and to be getting the zone 2 and to be changing our diet and to kind of focus in on that, because that's where we get the dysfunction, the inflammation, the
Is that
bad.
where you also talk about things like fatty liver disease and heart disease and type 2 diabetes? And is that where you have that conversation with them?
Well, when we highlight it right there, I talk about all of those kind of as this can lead to all of those things. This can be a show of all those things. But because our panel is so comprehensive, we're going down. And then when I'll reiterate this information, when we come over to our lipid NMR, right?
Yeah.
So we're seeing this first. Then we do our body scan as kind of like our first thing. Then we go into our labs. And when we go into our labs, then I'm like, okay, remember we talked about your lipids. These things correlate. And this is what we're going to do. It's going to help if we get your visceral fat levels down. It's going to help these things in the majority of patients. And then we move down, when their liver enzymes are messed up, when they're and on as we go through all of these things, we correlate back and we're saying we can use this as an accessory marker to see how we're doing in your health journey. And they're like, oh, okay. So when do I come in and get this again to see how I'm doing? Usually they start to see how important that is. And then we jump down to body fat percentage because everyone's super concerned about it.
I was going to say, everybody, they look at the body fat number first. Like, if I ever print their sheet and hand it to them, they're like looking at that over. I'm like, wait, there's other things we need to talk about first.
Embarrassingly, I do it too.
I know we all do.
And then for the staff and myself, we always look at that intracellular, extracellular water content. That's like when we're evaluating it, that's where our eyes go first, and our total body water content, because
I call that the Goldilocks effect.
Yeah.
It's like too hard, too soft, just right. And so I always want people in that just right, but it is my indicator of you got some lifestyle intervention that has to happen. Your sleep quality and quantity, your stress management, your hydration, like you're not eating enough fruit and vegetables, fiber, you're not eating enough, like it all shows up right there in that ICF and ECF.
Let me ask you an opinion here, just kind of to see. So we actually take our scanner with us when we have done marathons.
I'm the queen of taking the scanner to the marathon. It's my favorite thing on the planet. Now, it's not optimal scanning conditions because somebody just ran a marathon, but those people love data more than anything. So yes, I love taking it to a marathon.
So we actually started doing it before the marathon to look
if you can get them to.
Yeah. So we have it in the booth. there, and we were one of the sponsors for like the Utah Valley Marathon, and we were there, and it was so fascinating to see how dehydrated some of these people were coming in before their marathon. I will tell you seriously, it's like 99 out of 100.
You know why they do that though? Because I've worked in marathons for a long time. They're afraid they're going to have to pee while on course. So they don't pre-hydrate like I don't want to say like a real athlete, but most athletes are going to pre-hydrate, right? They don't really care about the fact that they have to pee, but your marathon runners fear that. So they'll hydrate along the way. It's a little bit like going to the bar and you don't want to break the seal. They don't want to have to break the seal. So they'll hydrate along the way. But I agree, because their marathon times would be so much better if they could figure out what the sweet spot of hydration was, that
Right.
they didn't. And this is a great sales tool for you guys. So you now have all their email addresses. And so you can email them all and say, or text message them all and say, we would love to optimize your performance for your marathons. And we would do that by testing your hydration and figuring out what your sweet spot is, so you don't have to use the restroom while on your marathon. That would be a great sales tool for you guys.
I love it. I love it. And so it just was fascinating to look at the data for me and be like, wow, almost all these people 12 to 24 hours, 18 hours before they're going to start are dehydrated, right?
Yes.
Their extracellular, intracellular volumes are off, and sometimes 3%, right?
Yes.
Variation. And you're like,
And their performance would be vastly improved if you could find that sweet spot for them. Do you use BMR and TEE, especially like, yes, with athletes, I always use BMR and TEE, but with mainstream population, the woman that's 40 pounds overweight, has metabolic dysfunction, doesn't sleep at night, do you use the BMR and the TEE off the result sheet?
absolutely. You need your BMR while you're working. You should never go less than this in your calorie deficit. And some of these people's BMR, these women who are like 5'5", 120 pounds or less, and their BMR is still like 1700, and their trainer's running them at like 900 calories.
That's what I love about BMR for mainstream population, because I'll do an assessment. They're a GLP-1 patient. Let's just use those because they're like the simplest to talk about, right? Everybody knows weight loss medications today. So they come in for an assessment with me, and I'm in the clinic, and I run their EVOLT scan, and I get to the calories portion, and it says that they need to eat 2,000 calories a day, and that's still at a 500 calorie deficit because they chose weight loss on their EVOLT. And they say, I could never eat 2,000 calories. I'm going to gain weight. I take them right to BMR and TEE. And it's the first time in my entire lifetime as a weight loss coach that I have this great tool that I get to educate on exactly what BMR and TEE is. And then they'll say, well, maybe I'm not as active as I said I was. And I was like, I don't think you're as active as you said you are, but I'm more worried about the BMR than the TEE. Your BMR is still 2,000. You are 300 pounds. So we don't want you. Yes, I can give you a GLP-1, but you're going to plateau. You're going to hit 15 milligrams of tirzepatide, and I'm going to have nowhere to go with you if your calorie deficit is too low. So you're not losing 200 pounds or 150 pounds in 3 months. This is going to be a 2-year journey, but we've got to look at your BMR and the BMR changes on the eVolt every single time, which I love. So it's every 30 days I get their new BMR. So their nutrition is always based on that.
Yeah. And I love that too, because we get to see how it's going. And what's even more fun is when the BMR goes up. It's so rewarding. I really love that part of it. And then, having them be able to focus on those protein macros. And
our protein macros are a little on the high side, but I like them.
I am so glad we set it up that way, because I need them just crushing the protein. And when you take a woman, who's perimenopausal, and you're like, yeah, you got to eat 150 grams of protein a day to hit your
goal. She's not even eating 60, by the way. So they see that number and they turn ghost white. And then they're like, I can't afford protein supplements. I'm like, eat an egg, you'll be fine. Exactly. You don't have to go out and buy protein supplements. I'd rather you chew on a cow instead. So yes.
Yeah, it's so fun to be able to do that and to see how much benefit it is. So yeah.
And these are people that have been told their whole life to eat like a white piece of fish and a terrible chicken breast. This is why they don't want to eat protein. That's why their protein is only 60 grams, because they think that they can't enjoy a ribeye steak and lose weight. And I'm like, I'm the queen of chicken thighs, ribeye steaks, salmon, because I don't care about the nutritional fat. I mean, I do, but If it's going to get them to eat more protein, I can get them to 120 or 150. That's the holy grail for me, is to get them to 120 or 150.
Yeah, and those going back to the food, those ones that are the nutritionally dense proteins that also have that good fat that we need, those plus a cup of vegetables, and most people are like, I could barely get through my carbs if I eat both those first.
We call it
Uh,
crowding out. So I used to do where we reverse type 2 diabetes and we set up their plates. We don't not put the starch on the plate. We put the starch on the plate, but we teach them what order to eat their food in. And we crowd out the starch. We fill them up on all the things that are so much better for them. But by the time they get to the rice, they just can't do it.
Yeah, it's such a massive difference. We talk to these GLP-1 clients of ours, and I tell them during the consult, I'm like, look, I can get you to lose weight by you sitting at your computer. But if that's the doctor you're looking for, I'm not the right one.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. Because when you plateau, I'm going to ask you all these questions, right?
And you're going to plateau. GLP-1s are not a magic wand.
It's not. Well, they should not be, right? And sometimes our
I
colleagues are
agree.
using them differently, and I remember talking to this person and he's like, "Oh, I go way past the high end, I'll go." And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, "Oh, they need
But
it."
why? There's no purpose to go past it.
And it's partly because they don't understand everything, right? They just think dose response, dose response, dose response. And I'm like, no.
Oh, wait. I'm going to defend them for 1 second. Yes, dose response, dose response. And you have the patient pressuring them saying, oh, you're getting crap product. These aren't good GLP-1s. Your formulation changed. They don't work anymore. And they're on Google getting this information. Dr. Google, like he's like a silo of your own beliefs, but it's validating what they think, and then they're putting so much pressure on these doctors that they're like, look, I don't care anymore. I'll just give you more because I need to shut you up, because you're going to go to a different doctor if I don't raise it, and somebody will eventually.
Right. And I think that's our job, is at that point is the education as the physician. I understand where you're coming from, but let's talk about
But
all
if we didn't bring them up too high to begin with, we would have never gotten to that problem either. So there's a mix of both of those things.
I totally agree. So it's this sword that cuts both ways. And we have this conversation, this really real conversation. Like, I really don't want you to go past this number ever. And because I want to bring you off of this, I want to bring you down. And all of the data so far shows the higher you get it, the harder it is to come back down and maintain your weight loss and to maintain that healthy feeling. So, judicious use of these products with a focus on muscle mass retainment and growth.
But here's the thing. You're BIA scanning everybody 30 days. So you can literally show them data that says you're losing visceral body fat, you're gaining muscle. So that's why you're not losing weight. Most doctors aren't doing this. So they're going purely off of BMI. They're going purely off of weight. The other one that I love is I have people that are very, very small, very low BMI, and they come to me and their visceral body fat is very high. Mm-hmm. And I'm blown away by it. And we do put them on low dose GLP-1s, and we are able to get them to lose visceral body fat and gain muscle at the same time. And that's the holy grail of what we do, which is very difficult to do.
Yeah, those patients are super rewarding because they've been told it's not your weight, it's not your fat, they've been told all of these things because someone's just going off of, yeah, your BMI is 27 or your BMI is 26 or your BMI is 25. Yeah. And then you're like, but your visceral fat is terrible. And these are the same patients, you do an MRI on them and they look like the most marbled ribeye steak you've ever seen, right? And on their muscles, especially in their thighs, and in their glutes, and then you change it all and they feel so much different. And sometimes their weight is almost exactly the same when you get.
I was going to say, in my experience, their weight never changes, but they feel vastly better once you get rid of some of that visceral body fat.
Their body composition is vastly different. And you're like, wow, you look ripped now. You look shredded. And they're like, I feel so good.
So you look at the BMR and the TEE, and then we have our segmental analysis. And I always talk about the segmental analysis because people ask me this from functional medicine every day. They're like, I have a BPC 157 client that came in. They were coming in for BPC 157 or Wolverine or TB 500, and they've got a shoulder injury. And when I do their segmental analysis, their left side is not smaller than their right side. And I say, well, you have to do an assessment of their workout history. So did they go to a traditional medicine doctor and the traditional medicine doctor told them not to work out, to rest that shoulder? And so now both shoulders are the same because they've done nothing with any of their upper body. And so it's hard for you to track your BPC 157 using segmental. But if you did a baseline scan on them at the time of injury, you see a different type of scan. So do you guys use that segmental, or how do you use that segmental?
We don't, I don't think we use it probably enough right now, because most of the patients, I'm seeing what you're seeing. Most of the patients are coming to me, they've had the injury for a long time. And
Yeah.
then they're like, hey, my ortho says I have this partial tear, or I have a slap lesion or whatever in my shoulder, and they want to do surgery on me. And I want to try and avoid surgery. And I'm like, okay, well, here are all of
Well,
our
that's also because shoulder surgery is like only 30% effective. It's like the
right.
number is so
Yeah,
low.
and bless my surgeon friends, that's the tool they have, right?
Yes, of course.
In their belt, right? Like if you're Batman and you have your utility belt, if you have one tool, guess what you grab all the time? That one tool.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful I have all these other tools. And I'm like, okay, here are the things we can use. Here's in our experience, and here's where the literature is not very good. Here's where the literature is really good. Here's kind of what we're seeing out when we talk to people. Here are all of our options. And what would you like to try? And then we could talk through this. I do see though, once we get people healed, it's funny how much those scans will change. And when
Oh, for
they're
sure. And I do like once we get them on the way to healing, the segmental analysis does help me with them. So I can because what will happen in a segmental analysis once they start lifting again is the uninjured side will actually progress faster than the injured side. And I think it's because of that injury PTSD. They're so afraid to injure that they're favoring that injured side that they don't work as hard, or they don't push as much weight, or they're doing more two-handed exercises instead of single-handed exercises, things like that. So that's where I really track, is after their pain management piece is gone, then I really track segmental analysis.
Yeah, and we utilize it the other way that's actually given us a ton of credibility is now I've treated you and your good legs getting big and your bad legs not, like for a knee.
Yeah.
It's probably time for you to go talk to the ortho. It's probably is time for you to do the knee replacement, because
Yes.
I'm not getting you there. And they're like, I can't believe you're telling me this, and I'm like, well, here's why,
Yeah.
I, your muscle atrophy is a big deal. It's probably time to really go talk to them. We've done the injections, we've done the peptides, we've tried all
You
these.
already did PRP before you came to me.
Right. Yeah. Or we do the PRP
Oh,
sometimes.
I didn't.
And
Oh, you guys
yeah,
do PRP also.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, when we've done these things, then I can look at them and keep that credibility and that honesty with the patient is like, nope, I don't have the answer for you. I want you to go see this specialist. Here's some great people in the Utah Valley who do this really well. And, go see them, because maybe if you get your knee replacement, just as an example, maybe if you get your knee replacement or whatever fixed, now you'll get that muscle back. Because what I don't want is for you to get years
Any
of
more
atrophy.
atrophy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
years of atrophy, because that's going to impair your ability to heal. And so being able to have that objective data, it's just all of this objective data takes us to that next level so that we can really, really help our clients.
And I do like cherry picking what I'm going to give the clients. I don't give them I'll give them their sheet to take home. They take the Evolt Active app so they can track their own progress. But I cherry pick because I know they're only going to remember 5 things. And then they're going to come back their second session, which I love. And then they bring in more questions for me. So I don't mind that, but I do cherry pick what I give them.
Well, I think that's actually the other key is we have the staff do a lot of training on this, because on their second scan, it's usually not me talking to them. It's the staff.
No.
And because I can't be there for every check-in scan. And so that training that's provided and having them go through that and maybe even go through it a second time. Sometimes they'll go back and be like, I didn't learn on the first time.
Yeah.
And go through it. Then now they're able to answer these questions, and the clients love it, because then all of our staff is
I
helping.
mean, I always say your front desk staff should go through the training. Everybody. And then I will tell you, Evolt is set apart by all the competition by three things: their support, their tech support, and their training. They provide so much training to their clients, but I always say, your front desk person, if you want them to be able to speak intelligently about the things that you offer, they should be trained on things.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's exactly what we do in Utah is everybody gets the training. So
Yeah,
it's
I love that.
fantastic.
So then, do you use the calories and macros that are provided based on the BMR and the TEE, or do you say like these are going to be your basic guidelines? Do you mess with them a little bit, or do you kind of just go off the ones that are on the sheets?
I look at them I look at them, and if they're definitely within the range, we usually start them there. Again, we've went over so many things, and so trying to get them to that point um, is really important. And a lot of times they're not ready to start tracking on day one. And so we teach them other techniques about like your food crowding. We use a very similar method for that. We teach some other things so as they start because we have
I
to
also use
see
something
where they're
called
at.
PFF, protein, fat, and fiber. So I don't care. I give them a list of proteins, a list of fats, and a list of fibers. And I don't care how much of anything they eat. I just want you to pick one from each column 3 times a day or 4 times a day and no snacking in between. Because if I can do that, they don't ever have to count a macro as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and we also talk about the reality, right? Like if you can get your diet cleaned up by 80 to 90%,
Correct.
you're going to have massive success. And letting them know, like, oh, there's that. Okay, I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to get to that point. And here are your guidelines. But what's really funny is somewhere between month 3 and month 6, they're ready to really focus in because now they have results. They've cleaned up a bunch of other things. They have more energy. They care about what's going in their mouth. That's where I see that light really turn on.
I
And
agree.
aha. And they want to come back and talk about the macros and like, how do I track? How do I set this up? That's usually where we see the biggest buy-in is after they get some results. We want to know.
What's the length of your customers? How are your patients? How long do they stay with you start to finish pretty much? Like I don't need, I'm just guesstimates.
Yeah, so most of our clients, we look at them and realistic. I say, hey, I can probably get you to your goal. If you're committed and you're going to do what we're talking about and you're going to hit this 80 to 90% of the time, I can get you there in 6 months or a year. Some people are 18 months, some people are 2 years, right? If you come into me and you're 5 foot tall and you're pushing 300 pounds, it's not going to be a year,
Yeah.
you
So
know?
you're scanning them
So
every 30, 60, 90 days, every 30 days while they're active with you. And then they've hit their goal weight. They're doing great. You've got them on their maintenance program. Do you then scan them every 3 months? What does that look like?
so all of our clients, if you're kind of there, we want you to come in every month for a touch point.
Hmm.
And because we don't want you sliding
But
backward.
do people comply with that once they're there?
I would say no, we probably have about 50% penetration of it. So we're
Yeah.
usually getting them at 2 months and 3 months, but we're having that touch point. We're inviting them to come in. How hard is it for our staff to see them, get their blood pressure, and get their scan, right?
Yeah.
That's a 10-minute slot for them. And
Yeah.
you can have multiple people kind of coming in at the same time for that. That's not, but it's that touch point. And
I'm
then
a big fan of touch points. That's why I love our risk retention report in our insights dashboard. That's anybody who hasn't scanned every 30, 60, or 90 days. So I just drop those into the CRM and I'm like, hey, why don't you just come in for a free scan? We'd love to see you. And my scanners are always in the lobby so people can come and scan on their own, but they can't print on their own. So they have to come to me to get the printout. So I let them scan and then they wait for me and I make sure that they get it. But to me, I absolutely agree. You've got to have those touch points.
yeah, so our scan prints out right there, but to get to the scan, you got to say hi to the people, in
Yeah.
the lobby. Hey, you're here. Oh, great, no problem. It's so good to see you. How you doing? And I'll tell you, if you're a client that ran with us, even if you're kind of off plan, you're not in our system, and you want to come back, my what I tell the staff is everybody who's been our client can scan whenever they want. Bring them in, right? Let's talk to them
And
because
you don't charge for scans, right? It's all built into your program.
it's built into our program because what I want them to do is I want them, if they're wanting to scan after they've kind of finished with us, something's up.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want price to be a deterrent. I can make
Exactly.
up that money elsewhere. I can raise the cost of a GLP-1 by $5. But that scan data is priceless to me. So I have never charged for a scan. I have no interest in charging for a scan.
Yeah, that's how we did it. Come on in, let's go over it. Let's talk to you. Get that touch point. Get that. And then really, even more important than the touch point is what's concerning you, because we usually can help.
For
I'm gonna,
sure, for
yeah,
sure.
I'm gonna go
I
on a cruise and I'm worried I'm gonna just go crazy at the dessert bar. All right, well, do you want to do some microdosing of GLPs, kind of turn off the food noise, be able to have one scoop of the dessert and put the spoon down? Is that what you want? I mean, we could come up with a
But
plan.
here's the thing, people are so afraid to ask you for that. They know that's what they want.
Yep.
They just are terrified because so many people are so dogmatic and saying, oh, weight maintenance and microdosing for GLP-1s is cheating. And I'm like, it's not cheating. Like, if you've never suffered from food noise, you have no idea how powerful that is. It is so psychologically damaging to these people that there's no room for that conversation.
When people do well in our program, we give them a shirt. And our shirt says, my wife designed them, and it says, and it says, do not, but in dark letters, it's a black shirt, right? Cheat. I use peptides. And so it looks across
Exactly.
the gym, it says I cheat, right? But it's I do not cheat. I use peptides. And I'm like, look, guys, it's fine. You
Yes.
you wouldn't feel bad if you're utilizing the tools that are there. Like
No.
suffer from that. No one's mad at an alcoholic who needs to take something so they don't go off the rails.
Or a cigarette
That's
smoker for
silly.
putting on a patch, or a cigarette smoker for chewing gum so they don't die of lung disease.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, let's pick the best route to keep you as healthy as
Yeah.
possible with the tools that we've been given. So,
So if a clinic owner was talking to you, like we're at an A4M conference, you're talking to a clinic owner and they're thinking about like all of different technology that they need for their clinic. What would be, what advice would you give them when they're looking at BIA scanners?
I would tell them, one, you really need a tool like this, right? You have to have a tool like this that is usable, understandable, and translatable to the clients. There are a ton out there, and so one, you want to vet the data. And I spent a lot of time. We have multiple clinics. This was not a small thing. We spent a lot of time vetting and
I was
figuring
part of
out,
that
like,
process. We spent a lot of
we
time.
spent a lot of time. And we asked hard questions, and we wanted to review the data for ourselves. And so, getting to that point, making sure that it's not just the company giving you the information, that there's outside information that's available, in comparison. So that's key. And then the other thing is space is an issue. So there are a ton of different ones that have to be able, like some of them have now a camera AI in them. But when you look at the space that you need in your clinic, that square footage costs you money. And how are you going to set up your process and your flow in your clinic? So the footprint matters, and the space and the square footage matters. And then the other thing that is amazing is, if you're going to go do anything outside of your clinic, is it portable? Because everybody wants to scan their body and see what their muscle mass is and see their body fat percentage after a couple people do it, right? And they get their
Yes.
report sheet and they're like looking at it and you're talking to them about it. Everybody wants to do that. When
Me
we did
next.
the
They'll all be like, me
marathon,
next. Can I go next? Yes.
yeah,
They get
exactly.
excited
We have
about it.
lines of people waiting to
Yes.
come in and scan. I'm like, man, I got to call Sharon and get a second one.
I
So
know. Well, you don't even need like Facebook ads anymore because you've got these line of people doing your scans and you've got their email address and cell phone numbers, right? Just from
exactly,
doing a scan.
exactly. So that part of the tool was really nice. And then the launch pad that you have is so powerful. And that was pretty unique, to be able to, the reporting system, the dashboard, where I can look immediately at who's coming in, who's not here, who have we missed, who are our one scan and done people, and what happened there, and be able to ask those questions and
Yeah.
figure out with the staff, how do we bring these people in and truly help them, and are we making the progress that we said we would make with this person?
Yeah. I always say this to gym owners. It's very different than clinics, but I always say this to gym owners. A lot of gym owners, their trainers don't want to scan because they don't want it to prove that they're a bad trainer. And I'm like, we don't live with our clients. All we can do is give our clients advice, but we can't train every client exactly the same. And it will show up if people are dropping off. But more importantly, if that client is not hitting their goals, they're going to leave us. We all know that, whether it's a gym, whether it's clinic. So you need that data. So my owners of gyms that will actually look at their insights and they get that information, they can go back to the trainers and have those teachable moments. Their trainers grow and their customers thrive. And I think that's true in clinical practice as well. You've got to have teachable moments so everybody can grow. And by the way, I'm sure you've grown, like you've seen the mistakes that you've made along the way. And I know I have, and I've gone, oh, I should have handled this client 3 months earlier. I should have looked at this data instead. So that's why I analyze every scan I do on people and why I lost a client.
Exactly. And the sunlight, the truth, the reality is the best thing that you can do because patients know. I'll tell you a terrible story. My wife was working with a trainer and he was doing caliper analysis. Okay. This was several years ago.
I actually don't mind caliper analysis. I still use them, but you better use them right.
Well,
and they're not visceral at all.
So he was doing caliper analysis and this was, and we're vetting everything, getting everything going. And we did our first scan at like an A4M with her. And then we subsequently were still going through the vetting process, went and saw you guys again and did another scan. And he was doing her back where she couldn't see what was going on and saying, oh, you're losing body fat percentage. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, your body comp's not really changing. And her 2 scans were exactly the same. And she was like, I knew in the back of my mind, he was lying to me. He was telling me what I wanted to hear, that we were making progress. And that was it. That was the end of the relationship.
Do you want to know how proud I am of the fact that you were at a convention and we gave you 2 scans that were almost identical? That tells me how good our equipment is because I don't know many other pieces of BIA. When you're dehydrated at a trade show, months apart, different time, and they're still going to be close and accurate. I'm pretty proud of too.
Yeah, and of course, yeah, and that also, speaks to it. But that was this moment where she was like, he's not telling me. I knew he wasn't telling me the truth. And now I have the data.
He's very self-aware too. So I'm surprised he pulled it on her because she's very, very in tune and self-aware.
Yeah, she knew what was going on, and then she was like, "This is ridiculous." So that when you have this data, we have to deal with reality, and so it doesn't do any good to tell your clients it's something other than reality.
Well, and that's the cool thing about eVolt is you get the eVolt Active app. It's completely free for all of your patients. So they can track and monitor their own progress. There's not a whole lot you can tell them that isn't in black and white. Now, you might interpret the results differently than somebody else, and that's okay. But we also do like the information buttons in there and give them the explanations of these things. So if your client actually cares, it's pretty black and white.
Yeah.
Well, Dawn, I want to thank you so much for taking this time and speaking to us. And I want to do a follow-up call with you in 6 months and let's see how things have changed at MOOV because you guys are moving and shaking every day and it's really exciting.
Awesome. Thanks, Sharon. It was fun to talk with you.
Have a great day.
All right.
That was the amazing Dawn Bennett from MOOV, and this is the Healthy Returns podcast. We hope that today's episode gave you valuable insights and inspiration to drive success in health, wellness, and your business. If you liked today's episode, please subscribe and share with your friends. In 2 weeks, we will be back with another amazing episode of the Healthy Returns podcast, brought to you by eVolt 360. If you would like more information on eVolt, it'll be www.evolt360.com. I'm Sharon Polsky, your host. Until next time, stay safe and stay healthy. The eVolt podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. The content shared here represents the views and opinions of the host and guests and should not be considered medical, health, or professional advice. This podcast is not a substitute for individualized care from a qualified provider. Please consult with your provider before making decisions that may affect your health and wellness. Any statements about treatments, health protocols, or medications discussed are based on personal experience or professional expertise and may not be suitable for everyone. Always seek personalized advice from a licensed professional who understands your specific needs.